Man creates a death ray strapped to his car, gives neighbors cause for concern. Dogs barking, loud parties, naked sunbathing in your backyard. You just can't win with some neighbors, but at least these minor annoyances wouldn't cause you to fear for your life. When one man got the idea to strap a giant death ray to his car and began firing it around his neighborhood, you can bet noise complaints were the last thing on his neighbors' minds. What kind of person would be crazy enough to build such a dangerous device? None other than Kevin Collar, YouTube's own backyard scientist. Kevin's reputation for wild experiments was known far and wide. Yet with his latest effort, the amateur scientist was really looking to push boundaries. He started by reaching out to the aerospace company Northrop Grumman in search of a high-quality laser. Unfortunately, the representative on the phone told him the model he was looking for was only available to the military or US government. And so Kevin had to get creative. Reaching out to a contact in China, he dropped a cool $1,500 on a state-of-the-art laser, though the item that arrived didn't exactly look like the centerpiece of a so-called death ray. Despite producing 200 watts of power, the laser fiber was only 100 micrometers in diameter. To put that into perspective, that's about the size of the average human hair. Yet, don't let that fact fool you. The beam produced by this laser was both incredibly powerful and invisible. In Kevin's words, it could literally burn out your retinas without you even realizing. Of course, who wouldn't want to see that in action? Well, maybe not the retina burning part, but Kevin was quick to build a makeshift laser system to test its power for himself. Placing a block of wood just a foot or two from the laser, Kevin threw on his protective glasses and fired. In just a matter of seconds, the laser burned a hole a half centimeter deep into the wood. Naturally, Kevin was eager to see what else he could burn with his newest toy. A rock became his next victim, and just like the wood, the laser burned through it like scissors through paper. But if this tiny laser could do so much damage to rock and wood, imagine what it could do to metal. Well, Kevin didn't have to imagine it, as he then used the beam to melt a zinc penny or heat a copper one until it was red hot. Yet zapping a few household items was a waste of the laser's potential. Kevin knew he needed to think bigger. That's why he decided to convert an old RV satellite mount and remote control into a fully functioning laser aim. This, however, was nothing compared to what Kevin did to the laser itself. Using a variety of telescopic reflectors, voltage converters, and other technical doodads, Kevin created a laser enclosure to focus and strengthen the beam. Now the real fun would begin. In light of the global COVID-19 pandemic, Kevin decided his first target would be the Corona, a bottle of Corona beer to be exact. With just a quick blast from the laser, the bottle was blown to smithereens. Next up was a laser sandwich, which was just a piece of ham and a slice of marble rye stapled to some plywood. The bread got a quick, precise toast from the laser, though unexpectedly, the ham was so translucent that the beam instead burnt the wood behind it. Even the Queen of England herself stopped by for a quick haircut courtesy of Kevin's laser. Unfortunately, it looks like he took a little too much off the top for old Liz's liking. Brits, you may want to look away now. Kevin finished off his test by blasting a lighter, which turned into a literal flamethrower as the liquid fluid within ignited. The experiment had proven a fun one, yet what's cooler than firing a laser during the day? Why, firing one at night. Mounting the laser to his car, Kevin and his team headed out to an open field with one mission in mind: shooting the beam into space. Fortunately, there were no airplanes in the area for miles, making this the perfect time to fire. With an infrared camera at the ready in order to make the beam visible, Kevin primed the laser and fired. Boom! The laser was massive and as bright as could be. But before the beam could ignite the nearby trees, Kevin tilted it up into the night sky. The beam seemed to go on forever, stretching miles into the air like a gigantic spotlight. Kevin pointed it at everything from stars to distant planets. Even the moon got a taste of the powerful laser. In the end, Kevin was really just out to show how the laser works and prove how cool they could be. Sure, building a homemade death ray was a pretty dangerous stunt, though it was nothing compared to the antics of another well-known daredevil. California resident Mad Mike Hughes always loved pushing the envelope when it came to public stunts. The 61-year-old made his living as a limo driver, but it was his passion for death-defying acrobatics that truly made him feel alive. Mike loved the wild lives stuntmen like Evel Knievel led. He wanted to do something that would capture the world's attention just like Knievel, so he came up with quite the epic plan. He wanted to build a rocket ship and ride it into space. Set on the idea, he started a fundraising campaign so he'd have enough money for everything required to make an actual working rocket. However, his first campaign run only garnered a little over $300. But pretty soon, more and more people learned about his seemingly impossible endeavor, and donations started pouring in, especially from celebrities who wanted to take part in this crazy goal. Mike raked in nearly $8,000 once his idea gained traction. He finally had the money needed to build a, hopefully, working rocket. But his quest for greatness didn't come without speed bumps. Although Mike claimed the Bureau of Land Management gave him verbal permission to perform this rocket launch, so long as the Federal Aviation Administration agreed, the BLM said no such conversation took place. So Mike moved the whole operation to a privately owned area of the Mojave Desert, where law enforcement couldn't put a halt to anything. All this planning begged the question, why exactly was Mike doing this to begin with? Mike belonged to a small group of people who call themselves flat earthers. He figured if he could get into space, he'd be able to prove the Earth was, in fact, a flat disk. Sounds pretty odd, right? Well, flat Earth theorists like Mike believe the Arctic Circle is the center point of the massive planetary disk we all live on. Surrounding the edges of the disk is a 150-foot ice wall that keeps the waters in place. What about gravity? You're probably thinking. Well, these free thinkers are sure gravity is all an elaborate illusion. According to them, this Earth disk we live on accelerates upwards at 32 feet per second, which keeps us all grounded. With a launch plan in place and some funds raised, the self-taught rocket scientist built a vehicle that, surprisingly, looked like it had the moxie to actually reach some pretty serious heights. For Mike, there was a lot riding on this launch. A successful trip would, in his eyes, lend credibility to something he passionately believed in. Finally, launch day arrived. The 61-year-old man loaded himself into his homemade rocket and prepared for the launch that would hopefully see his safe return home. The countdown began. With all the flat earthers cheering him on, Mad Mike launched his homemade rocket off his mobile trailer bed on March 25, 2018. Incredibly, the thing took off in a screaming steam of smoke. Mike originally planned on reaching a speed of 500 miles per hour, enough speed to launch him into space. However, the ship only reached 350 miles per hour, and the parachute deployed at an altitude of 1,875 feet. Sadly, Mike's mission to space failed. A crew of paramedics met Mike at the scene, where the rocket landed back to Earth. They carefully helped him out, making sure his fragile body wasn't battered and bruised. Even though Mike claimed all he felt was some minor back pain, he was taken to a hospital to make sure nothing serious took place while he was airborne. Sure, he never made it the full distance, but he certainly made his mark on the world of stunts. He made such a mark that he caught the attention of Daniel Tosh. The comedian hosted Mike on an episode of his show, Tosh.0, to discuss his failed mission to space and his flat Earth beliefs. The two also joked about his daring ambition to one day try again. While Mike never ended up being the rocket man he envisioned, it wasn't for lack of trying. Luckily, his endeavor didn't seriously injure him, and he could exist as a hero to dedicated flat earthers everywhere until he died in February 2020 after another failed launch. As wild as Mike's goal was, other ambitious thrill-seekers have tried their hands at doing the impossible. David Hahn, like Mike, decided to do a little home experiment of his own, and it ended up becoming quite the ordeal.